start with this. Mikey Garcia's desired foes for a ring return are slipping away. Garcia understands that he perhaps needs to move forward without Pacquiao in his plans. I'd be interested in a rematch with Errol Spence Jr., but he's not going to be interested in a rematch. I've got to earn the spot. I got to win 1 or 2 fights, Garcia told Eli Sekback of ES News. Possibly, I might fight Yordenis Ugas, but is Ugas going to fight me? He might be interested in fighting someone else thinking he's going to get the Spence fight. Ugas might decide to take someone else. I don't know. It's just not what we want. It's what other people want. That's what makes it complicated to get. These are just my thoughts. If the pool of options for Mikey Garcia is narrowed down to a short list of either 1 or 2 names, then the guy might as well just retire now.
Yeah, he might as well.
Mikey Garcia is not a fighter that can be accused of conducting bad business. For what it's worth, the last couple of years, Mikey Garcia has made himself a substantial amount of money.
He has.
He definitely has his wits about him, but he's going through his career at this point a certain way. Brings up names like Errol Spence Jr., that he would like to have a rematch with that guy.
Why?
And I wonder if Mikey ever asks himself, who does he think wants to see a rematch? Because the boxing fans sure don't. Not based on what he put forth in their initial meeting. Nobody wants to see Errol Spence Jr. versus Mikey Garcia 2. Nobody wants to see Mikey pumping his fists at the end of every round for simply surviving the round. Nobody wants to see that.
Nobody.
The name of Errol Spence Jr. has some value tacked onto it. I mean, he is one of the bigger names in the welterweight division. I use that term loosely. Bigger.
Yeah.
There's really only one superstar in the welterweight division, and it's the guy who's in the twilight of his career. It's the guy who's on the verge of retiring. But Errol, he does get some attention. He does get some press, and that's really what Mikey Garcia is looking to capitalize on. That's the only reason he's entertaining a rematch situation with that guy. It's just that it's not a realistic proposition. The fans don't want to see a second outing. The fans don't want to see a second fight. They're not asking for one.
You shouldn't even be looking at that guy right now.
He brings up the name of Yordenis Ugas. All of a sudden, Yordenis Ugas is an attractive option for Mikey Garcia. And, I don't know that Mikey Garcia harbored these sentiments before the WBA so decided to elevate Ugas to full WBA champion. It seems that he must have had a change of heart somewhere very recently, because I don't remember hearing Mikey Garcia entertain a fight like that most of 2020. It's been about a year since Mikey Garcia fought anybody. He was last in action in February of last year against Jesse Vargas. The Jesse Vargas fight where Mikey Garcia made an obscene amount of money, enough that he didn't make a ring appearance the rest of the year. Likely because he didn't need to, though I suspect he didn't want to all that much either.
I don't think he wanted to fight Ugas all that much either.
Up until recently, a fighter like Yordenis Ugas to Mikey Garcia was a high-risk, low-reward kind of guy, because it was only recently that Ugas became a full-fledged welterweight champion. That was just a few days ago. Before that, I don't recall hearing Mikey Garcia talk about Ugas as a potential opponent option, but all of a sudden, that he's a full-fledged champion, this is someone that he would like to fight, or would have.
Did you reach out to him?
Yeah, 12 months to do it. It's been 12 months since Mikey Garcia fought anybody. It's been 12 months since the Jesse Vargas fight of February 2020. Mikey really wanted Yordenis Ugas. What did he do to get that fight?
What?
In light of these comments from Mikey Garcia, I find myself asking a hypothetical question.
Oh, you want Ugas all of a sudden?
Well, what did you do to get him? Do you think that if in 2020 Mikey Garcia had reached out to Yordenis Ugas, Ugas would have declined the fight? You think it's a fight Ugas wouldn't have been receptive to? I think Ugas would have jumped at the chance to fight a guy like Mikey Garcia.
I mean, maybe Ugas won't be as receptive now.
Perhaps not, since Ugas is knocking on the door of an Errol Spence Jr. fight, the fight that Mikey Garcia wants to have again, the fight that he already had, and for some reason, he wants a rematch. Really, to me, sounds more like he just wants a second payday. Things aren't working out with Manny, so Errol is Mikey's plan B, pursuing a rematch with him.
Which was never likely.
I'll tell you what I think. I think Mikey's been living high on the hog, and I won't castigate him for that. He worked himself up to a point to where he, made some good money, very good money, conducted some very good business, and he was reaping, still is reaping, the benefit of that. He's not forced back into the ring.
From being strapped for cash.
If Mikey Garcia has exhibited anything the last couple of years, it's that he is a very capable boxer and a very shrewd businessman. But here today, given how selective he's being,
How picky.
how selective his timing is, the guy might as well retire. Because, he may or may not get that Manny Pacquiao fight. And I can say with some confidence that no one wants to see him fight Errol Spence Jr. for a second time. There's no demand for that. Ugas would have been a potential opponent option if you didn't wait so goddamn long to entertain him as an opponent option. He's full WBA champion now. He might be going straight into a unification match. He has no need to have an excursion with you. Perhaps if you wouldn't have waited for, the WBA to elevate him to full champion, maybe you would have had a shot at landing that fight. But here today, I don't know how likely that is. And with those things in mind, if Mikey's going to be so selective, if what he wants to do for the near future is limited to a very short list of names, just one or two, maybe three guys.
What, three?
If that's what he's limited to doing, you might as well retire.
There's not much chance of him doing any business with Top Rank.
That's a pity because there are good fights there for him. If Josh Taylor beats Jose Ramirez, I could really go for a Taylor versus Garcia fight. But, just not much chance of Mikey doing business with Bob, given their sordid past, their sordid history. Matchroom, Mikey's willing to do business with Matchroom. He has in the past. It's just that Matchroom, they ain't got the inside track on the welterweight division, or the junior welterweight division.
I mean, what are you going to do?
What are you waiting for? You still waiting for Manny? You still waiting for Errol? These are the only two guys you got in your crosshairs? Oh, right, Ugas.
Good luck with that fucking shit.
As a boxing fan, I've not even much interest in seeing Mikey Garcia continue to campaign as a welterweight. I'd much rather see him go back down to junior welterweight. Perhaps take on the winner of Taylor versus Ramirez, provided that winner is Josh Taylor. It's just that Mikey, he wants certain dollar amounts. He wants to get paid a certain way. And here today, in the midst of this pandemic and how it's affected the industry, I'm not sure that the money's even there for him. I think that there are still fights he can have that would get him the attention
Of the boxing community.
it makes for a big fight, but perhaps not as big a payday as he would like. In fractured relationships, sordid affairs, sordid history, things are just far too particular for Mikey Garcia these days, and that's why he's been out of action for as long as he has. Really not even faulting Mikey Garcia for trying to conduct the best business that he can. I'm just saying that these are not ideal circumstances for anybody. Thus, idealizing these situations as much as he is, well, that makes for inactivity. That's why he hasn't returned to the ring since February of last year, because, he's still waiting on stuff.
Stuff that might not happen.
Those things in mind, unless Manny picks up the phone and gives Mikey a call, I don't know who Mikey's going to end up fighting. Bob's not going to overpay him. Eddie ain't got the inside track on the welterweights, and on the PBC side of things, Errol doesn't want to give you a rematch, and even if he did, no one wants to see it. In other news, Amanda Serrano expects a war with Daniela Bermudez on March 25th. She was quoted as saying, "I'm super happy to have a date and an opponent to defend my beautiful titles. Daniela will come looking to be crowned a world champion in 4 divisions. I think our fight will give a lot to talk about, as I understand there will be a lot of action, and of course, that I am ready for another Puerto Rico war against Argentina. In 2014, I was crowned the 135-pound world champion in Argentina when I beat the champion, Maria Maderna, who had 3 successful defenses, and that may be another motivation for Daniela. But I have my motivations because I come on behalf of Puerto Rico," Serrano said. I think Amanda is right in that assertion, that what Daniela Bermudez is coming to do is coming to fight. She's coming to bring her a war as best as she can. And in that way, Amanda is right in that assertion. She's right to expect that from Daniela because that's what Daniela does. It's just how capable Daniela is at this weight that is in question. Daniela is not a finesse fighter. Thus, it won't be a fight of finesse, at least not as far as Daniela's concerned.
Daniela's a slugger.
Daniela's a scrapper, a very capable scrapper at 118, very capable at 122. It's at 126 that she is not tested, battle tested. I think that the fight's aesthetic, the look of the fight, could be a good advertisement for Ring City USA, could be a good advertisement for Amanda Serrano. This is certainly a better opponent choice than her previous opponent, Diana Santana, who she'd already knocked out before. And that subsequent rematch took place several years out from their first fight it was a rather pointless excursion. Daniela Bermudez it is safe to say that Daniela is a cut above Diana Santana. She's certainly a more decorated fighter than Diana Santana. Daniela's not coming off a loss. You know, she ain't got a losing record. She's been in there with some top names, solid fighters.
She's gonna do her best to make it a fight.
So visually, I think the fight will yield a fan-friendly aesthetic. Visually, I think the fight will be appealing because Daniela's not going to fight negative. That's not what she does. She's far from a safety-first kind of fighter. She's going to open up and she's going to go for it, which will then afford Amanda the opportunity to use that power of hers. Amanda Serrano has often said that 126 pounds really is her best weight, as she is a natural featherweight. It really is Daniela Bermudez that's stepping out of her comfort zone.
It's risky.
I don't know how well Daniela takes a punch at featherweight, you know? Daniela Bermudez has a professional record of 29 wins, 3 losses with 3 draws. And at no point in Daniela Bermudez's career has she ever been stopped. She's never been knocked out.
Never once.
Probability of that happening in this situation increases because Daniela is moving up in weight, because this isn't where she normally campaigns, and she is facing a rather sizable puncher in her featherweight debut. So even though she's never been stopped before, in this situation with Amanda at 126, yeah, it could actually happen.
There's a first time for everything.
Those things in mind, the stylistic matchup, you know, both girls being punchers, one being a little bit more refined, a little bit more subtle than the other, but both girls being punchers. Amanda and Daniela both like to apply pressure in their own way. You put those two types of fighters in the same ring with each other, what you are going to get is a war. What you are going to get is an action fight. Perhaps Amanda is more adequately suited to have that kind of fight at featherweight than Daniela is, but all the same, that's the kind of fight that you're going to get.
That's what you should expect.
And finally, the WBO have set the deadline for negotiations to commence between Demetrius Andrade, the WBO middleweight champion, and his mandatory challenger, Liam Williams. The deadline for them to reach a deal is February 10th before it goes to a purse bid. That essentially gives them a 4-day grace period between now and the 10th to reach a deal. If they don't reach a deal, then goes to a purse bid, and, you know,
Both sides get to bid on who hosts the fight.
I don't expect that Demetrius Andrade is going to end up on the Queensberry Promotions BT Sports side of things. I expect that it will be Matchroom that wins the bid, and it will be Liam Williams that ends up having to cross over. The fight's not a bad fight. It's a classic style matchup of the boxer versus the puncher, with Demetrius being the boxer and Liam Williams being the puncher. I don't know how much credit Demetrius Andrade will be given from the boxing community at large, the boxing critics, I should say. I don't know how much credit they'll give him for beating Liam Williams, you understand?
If he does.
This is a sport of snap judgments, knee-jerk reactions, and short memories. Liam Williams is probably the only guy out there exhibiting any kind of enthusiasm towards facing Demetrius Andrade. But Liam Williams himself,
He ain't the most accomplished guy.
at least not compared to what else is out there? 2-division champion Jermall Charlo, former unified and current IBF champion Gennady Golovkin, Ryota Murata. Any one of those scalps would be a bigger scalp for Demetrius Andrade's resume than the scalp of Liam Williams. I mean, the way it breaks down, if Liam beats Demetrius, it's a bigger win for Liam than if Demetrius beats him. Demetrius beating Liam, I mean, it does round out his resume a little more, but I reiterate, you know, Liam Williams is not the most accomplished guy to begin with. Game fighter, aggressive fighter. I think he's going to do his best to really make this a scrappy fight, take Demetrius out of his comfort zone. I think the fight could yield a pleasing aesthetic. But what I don't think is that people are going to be shouting from the rooftops if Demetrius beats this guy.
He's a step up from Luke Keeler.
He is a cut above that guy. I'd put Liam somewhere around a Maciej Suliecki kind of guy. You know, capable guy, but not an upper crust, upper echelon guy. At least not yet. At least not on paper. Not so far. Demetrius Andrade is a fighter, a 2-division champion that many fight fans have grown quite accustomed to pigeonholing. We're always hearing about what's not on his resume and how he has the thinnest body of work of any two-division champion in postmodern boxing. And some of these quips are true, but we always return to the familiar talking points when it comes to this.
We have to.
That it takes two to tango. Takes two guys to make a fight, only takes one to fuck it up. If you don't see names like Gennady Golovkin or Ryota Murata or Jermall Charlo, if you don't see those names on Demetrius' resume, you do realize that in order for those fights to take place, those guys have to want those fights.
And do they?
There's no way you can broach the subject of Demetrius Andrade, be objective, and gloss over that. Gloss over that glaring fact that Jermall Charlo, he doesn't want to fight the guy. In so many words, that's what he said in plain English. So of course Demetrius Andrade isn't going to have his name on his resume because Jermall doesn't want to fight him. And before you go bringing up the Jermall stuff, hey, when Jermall eats, Jermall don't shit. And that Jermall Charlo fight wasn't worth what this Jermall Charlo fight was worth. They offered him a multi-million-dollar payday. He didn't want it. He said in so many words he's willing to move up in weight and fight some other champion before he fights Demetrius. And as it stands, he hasn't moved up yet, has he?
No, he hasn't.
That's really no excuse, is it?
Not really.
He made those comments over a year ago. Those comments are from over a year ago.
Gennady Golovkin never seems interested.
I mean, he really never has. He never does. And Gennady Golovkin does have more options than Demetrius Andrade, but all the same, he just never seems interested in unifying titles with that guy.
Is that Demetrius Andrade's fault?
You can't keep telling me about these names that aren't on his resume without explaining, without elaborating as to why those names aren't on his resume. Why the name of a Jermall Charlo? Why the name of a Gennady Golovkin isn't on his resume? Are these guys that want to fight him?
No.
Because if they don't, then you're pissing in the wind and it's getting on your leg.
Neither of those guys want to fight him.
I understand that Jaime Munguia is a viable option for Gennady Golovkin. I also understand that so is Ryota Murata. With Ryota Murata, he could actually have a unification match, and I get that. But all the same, every time Gennady Golovkin decides to go the other way, every time he acts oblivious to the existence of Demetrius Andrade, that isn't exactly Demetrius Andrade's fault. He can't force the guy to fight him, and he doesn't seem to want to, so it is what it is. It creates this kind of a situation. But when it does, tell the whole story, why don't you?